This is the story of Elena Hart and Gabriel Quinn, a journey where a contract slowly transformed into something real, a true family. When the old city bus came to a stop at a quiet street corner in Chicago, Elena Hart stepped off, clutching her faded umbrella tightly. The cold wind tugged at her neatly tied brown hair, and her worn coat barely kept the chill away, yet her eyes gleamed with quiet determination. At 27, Elena wasn't someone who stood out, no prestigious degree, no family, no status, but she carried a heart full of longing to love. Born and raised in an orphanage in rural Indiana, Elena had grown accustomed to silence and scarcity. Holidays passed with no visitors, and every afternoon she waited by the gate hoping someone would come for her. No one ever did. But those lonely years planted a dream in her heart. One day, she would build a community center where orphans could feel loved, seen, and heard. Putting her dream on hold, Elena moved to Chicago to work part-time as a nanny, a job she cherished because she understood what children needed, not just a caretaker, but someone who would listen, who would hold their hand when the world felt too wide. Then, on a drizzly morning, she received an unexpected call from an agency manager. "Mr. Gabriel Quinn is looking for someone to care for his son." The name held weight. Gabriel was a renowned attorney, once featured on the covers of financial magazines, known for his brilliance and his cold, distant demeanor. And that was how Elena found herself standing in front of the towering iron gates of the Quinn estate, a place that just might change the course of her life forever. The gate creaked open with a low groan, leading Elena into a world that felt like it belonged in a magazine. The Quinn estate was breathtaking, soaring ceilings, glimmering crystal chandeliers, and marble hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly. Elena swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay composed. She wasn't here to be dazzled, she was here for a job. The butler led her into a waiting room, where a tall man stood with his back to the window. When he turned, she recognized him instantly. Gabriel Quinn. Dark, tousled hair, piercing gray eyes, and sharp, chiseled features. Though impeccably dressed, there was an unmistakable coldness in his gaze that made the room fall into a hush. "Elena Hart?" he asked, voice even and clipped. "Yes, sir," she replied, steadying her voice. The interview felt like walking a tightrope. Gabriel flipped through her resume, his eyes narrowing. "No early education degree? No experience at elite schools?" he questioned. Elena answered calmly, "I don't have a prestigious diploma, but I do have a heart that understands what children need to feel safe." Gabriel looked up. There was something in her voice, raw sincerity, that gave him pause. And then, the soft sound of tiny footsteps echoed down the hallway. A boy, no older than 4, stood at the door with messy curls and a well-worn teddy bear clutched to his chest. His big eyes looked past his father and landed on Elena. He didn't run to Gabriel, he walked straight to her. "Can you tell a story?" he whispered. Elena knelt, smiling gently. "What kind of story do you like? Pirates or superheroes?" Leo hesitated, then softly replied, "A story about a mom." The words fell like a hush over the room. Right after the interview, Elena was officially hired as a part-time nanny for Leo, a little boy no one before had been able to reach. But with Elena, things were different. She didn't rush. She didn't try to force closeness. Instead, she simply listened when he was quiet, gave him space when he hid in corners with his teddy bear, and patiently told bedtime stories, tales about rabbits finding their way home or superheroes named Mom. Little by little, Leo began to take her hand, to smile, to ask innocent questions like, "Will you stay here forever?" Elena only smiled. She didn't make promises. Because broken ones leave the deepest scars in a child's heart. Gabriel noticed everything. From a distance, he watched his son sleep through the night without fear, saw Elena prepare toys with thoughtful care, stay up tending to Leo through a fever, singing softly by his bedside until he fell asleep. These weren't things any ordinary nanny would do, and Gabriel knew that. He began to realize she was more than just staff. She was the first person who made Leo feel safe, and perhaps the first who stirred something within him too. A few days later, while Elena was reading to Leo, the butler entered. "Mr. Quinn would like to see you in the study." This time, Gabriel's eyes weren't cold, but contemplative, heavy with thought. He spoke evenly. "I have a proposal. It's not about nannying." Then he shared about his late father's will, its demand that he marry and establish a stable family within 3 months. If not, the Quinn Foundation would fall into the hands of his uncle, Victor Quinn, a man whose past nearly bankrupted the organization. "I need a legal marriage, 1 year. After that we part ways. In return, I'll fully fund the community center you've always dreamed of." And when Elena asked, "Why me?" Gabriel replied quietly, "Because you have no reason to betray me. You didn't come here for money, and I trust that you won't hurt Leo." His words struck her deeply. He didn't choose her because she was special. He chose her because she was safe. She left his office with her thoughts spinning. That night, she stood by the window in her small apartment, clutching a faded notebook, rereading the line she'd once written. Just 1 day to be part of a family. And in the end, she said yes. Just 1 year. For Leo, for her dream. But her heart whispered that the price of this agreement might be more than she ever imagined. The wedding took place just days after Elena agreed. No flowers, no celebration. Just a quiet, formal ceremony at City Hall where a clerk read their vows in a still, modest room. Elena wore a simple white dress prepared by the butler, her hand trembling slightly as she slipped on a plain, stoneless wedding band. Gabriel, in a sharp black suit, remained composed throughout the ceremony, as if he were signing a business deal. But when little Leo grabbed both their hands, beaming brightly and said, "Mommy, Elena is the prettiest bride," the room shifted. Elena bowed her head with a soft smile, but her chest tightened, because she knew this smile didn't come from a real marriage. That very evening, she moved into the Quinn estate. Her room was in the east wing, far from the family's main quarters. It was spacious, well-furnished, but cold. It didn't feel like home. It was just temporary housing for a 1-year role. The next morning, Gabriel invited her into his study. His voice was steady, but firm. "We only act as a couple in public, in front of shareholders, the press, family. Here, you are still Leo's nanny. I'm your employer. Nothing more, nothing less." Elena nodded. "I understand," she replied, her voice soft but strong. From that day, their lives moved like parallel lines. Gabriel left early for work at his law firm, consumed by cases and deadlines. Elena spent her days with Leo, teaching him to read, helping him build castles from wooden blocks, telling stories that lulled him to sleep like a mother's lullaby. Though they kept their distance, Gabriel couldn't help but notice. His heart felt lighter when he heard Leo's laughter. When he saw Elena standing in the garden, her white dress swaying in the wind, her eyes soft and full of unspoken warmth. And yet, he told himself again, "Don't be foolish, Gabriel. She's only your wife on paper." As time passed, between silent breakfasts and accidental touches, Elena and Gabriel remained 2 parallel lines. But the heart doesn't always follow logic. Elena began to feel the weight of the silence. Each night, after putting Leo to sleep with a bedtime story, she sat by the window, holding her old leather notebook, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't name. She was living under the same roof with a man who stirred her heart, but remained a stranger. Then one day, while taking Leo for a routine checkup at the children's hospital, Elena unexpectedly ran into Daniel, an old friend from college, now a pediatrician. They had once volunteered at the same orphanage and shared dreams of helping children. Daniel invited her to dinner, saying he wanted to hear about her journey over the years. Elena agreed. It was a light evening, like stepping back into a simpler time. She laughed more than usual, her eyes shining with ease. What she didn't know was that Gabriel saw it. He happened to walk into the same restaurant with a business associate when his eyes found Elena smiling like that. For someone else, his chest tightened. She had never smiled like that with him. Daniel lightly touched her shoulder as they said goodbye. Gabrielle turned away. That night, after Leo had gone to bed, Elena knocked on Gabriel's study door, but he had been waiting for her. His voice was low, laced with tension. Do you think you can just go out on dates while still being my wife, even if only on paper?" Elena froze. "You said this was a contract, so I don't have a right to live my life?" "Don't complicate things," he muttered, avoiding her eyes. Elena stared at him, her voice cracking. "Have you ever considered that I have a heart, too?" After that night's argument, the atmosphere in the Quinn estate became heavier than ever. Gabriel kept his distance while Elena retreated into herself, offering only forced smiles in front of Leo. But every time the boy asked, "Mommy, Elena, why are you sad?" her heart tightened. That night, while Leo slept, Elena sat alone in her room, opened her old leather notebook, and wrote, "I once dreamed of a real family where Leo calls me Mom and Gabrielle looks at me, not out of obligation, but maybe that dream is too far away." She set the pen down, tears falling onto the page. The decision was made. She would leave when the contract ended, not because she didn't love, but because she loved too much. In the room next door, Gabriel lay awake, restless. When he accidentally opened a drawer, he found the little notebook Elena had once dropped. For the first time, he opened it and read. The handwriting was messy, emotional. Just one day to be called Mom. Just once to be chosen as someone's family. His chest tightened. At that moment, it hit him, not like a thought, but like a storm. He loved her, not because she mothered Leo so tenderly, not because she saved his legacy, but because she broke through the fortress around his heart. And now that she was slipping away, he realized she wasn't just part of his life, she was his life. Rain began to fall. He didn't hesitate. No coat, no umbrella, only a pounding heart and a decision burning inside him. Find her, before it's too late. Elena was at the community center, hosting the first free class for orphaned children. She was hanging up artwork when the door burst open. She turned. Gabriel, soaked in rain, stepped inside. "Elena," he said, voice hoarse, soaked in rain and regret. "I don't need an arrangement. I need you, the woman who taught my son to smile again and taught me how to feel. Be my wife, not for a year, not for a reason, just because I love you." Elena stood frozen, her heart pounding like the rain drumming outside the eaves. Gabriel, soaked and breathless, never looked away, his voice trembling but certain. "I love you, Elena, not because of the contract, not even because of Leo, but because you brought light back into my life." She shook her head, lips quivering. "Why now, when I was ready to walk away?" Gabriel stepped closer, taking her hand, eyes pleading. "Because I was afraid. I thought love only brought pain. But when you left, I realized what I feared most was losing you forever." In front of the stunned children, Gabriel pulled her into his arms. "I don't need a year. I don't need a performance. I just need you to be my wife, the mother of my children, the last hand I hold in this life." Elena cried, tears mixing with the rain still clinging to her hair, and then she nodded. "Yes, I do." 1 year later, the gentle spring sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a warm golden glow over the backyard of the Hart Community Center. Laughter from children echoed through the garden, a place once barren, now transformed into a haven of hope and love. Elena stood among the little ones, holding a paintboard, helping them mix colors and fill their drawings. Every so often, she knelt down to wipe a messy hand or fix a crooked crayon. She wore a simple white dress, her hair tied back, though a few strands danced in the breeze. Her face was radiant, not just from the sunlight, but from the quiet joy blooming inside her. She was no longer the orphan girl lost in dreams. She was now a beloved wife, a mother called by name, and a woman carrying something miraculous. Her second child, growing stronger each day. From the porch, Gabriel stepped out, 2 steaming mugs of herbal tea in hand. He paused for a moment, silently watching Elena among the children's laughter and light. The coldness he once wore like armor was long gone, replaced by something gentler, warmer, as if he still couldn't quite believe she was truly his. He set one mug on the wooden table and handed the other to Elena as she approached. She smiled, eyes sparkling with contentment. Just then, Leo came bounding over, cheeks flushed from play. He climbed into her lap and pressed his ear gently against her belly. "Hey, baby," he whispered. "I'm your big brother, Leo. You're gonna love Mommy. She's the best in the world." Gabriel chuckled, placing a hand on Leo's shoulder. Elena looked at them both. Two souls she once thought she'd never have, and her heart swelled. Family. The dream she once scribbled into a notebook was now a living, breathing truth. Later that afternoon, the three of them gathered in a quiet corner of the yard, the spot they'd chosen to plant something new. Leo helped dig while Elena carefully placed the sapling into the earth. Gabriel offered his hand as she stood, a simple gesture filled with quiet affection. "It'll grow with the baby, and with us, right, Mommy?" Leo asked, his eyes wide with hope. Elena nodded, whispering, "And with all our love, too." Beneath the setting sun, they stood together, no longer bound by roles or contracts, but by something far deeper. Three hearts intertwined by trust, by love, and by a promise that needed no paper to make it real. We are a family, forever.